All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining me in this session. As always, I'm honored to be here with you in this time of sensitivity and uncertainty, and I look forward to sharing time with you here in our sacred space together today. Let me just make sure my sound is working here. Sorry, lost connection. Okay. Uh, so the things we will do in our live sacred space today are in just a few moments, we will start the process of setting our sacred space together. And then we have our overall talk topic this session for this month, which is how to unblock your life flow. How to unblock your life flow. We'll have a bit of an exercise wrapped in after our conversation about this topic, and then we'll close sacred space. Um, so before I open sacred space, there's just a couple of housekeeping items. Why do I keep getting this stream? Okay. Um, about upcoming live events that we will be doing together in small group cohorts. So the first is there was a question here about February in Athens. And just to clarify, this coming February 2023, at this point, we've decided we will do a full week-long retreat, not in Athens, but in Bali, in Indonesia. And it will be the second half of February, probably starting around I'm guessing like the 25th of Feb, for a week. Uh, we're sort of working out the details with the site we want to do it with. And the topic will probably be the same as this current live cohort that we're in the middle of right now, which is creating the life of your dreams. So archetypal manifestation, full power, looking at all the different areas um, of your life: finances, money, body image, health, family, relationships, career, your bliss. Finding the specific archetypes that are governing kind of the action, right, and pattern of each of these areas of your life, and then looking at the overall pattern that each of these archetypes, sort of feed into. There's like a governing meta pattern typically to a person's life, um, and then deciding how you like it, and if there are aspects you don't like, how to change it to something you like even better, and then so on and so forth after that. So that's the first thing. So we'll have a retreat in person in Bali, second half of February. If you're interested potentially in doing that, please email me uh, or Gary, and because we haven't sent out the announcement yet, we probably won't send out a formal announcement for another week or two. But if you're interested, uh, and you tell us ahead of time, you can also pepper in like what you're interested, why you would want to come to this retreat. And these things are typically capped at like 12 people, right? So it's very small, very intimate. So if you're the first 3 or 4 people who email us and you're like, this is what I'm looking for, then that will start to nudge me. It will be like a muse download for me in terms of like how we may want to adjust the topic and the focus. So that's the first thing. The second event is we will probably be doing a month-long online cohort, online advising group, starting like mid-January for a month. And this was a result of a download and brainstorm with Gary. And the topic will be a sort of very practical, hands-on workshop for a month, so every week for 4 weeks, on how to work with your muse, your higher, sort of guidance, source of inspiration, intuition, in detail. Right. So it's not just like, oh, sort of meditate and let it come to you, but it's like there's very, very specific things we do around here, um, not just to take download, but to take it and then often you get a download, you get a flash of inspiration, and then you're off for the races trying to implement it, and then all this stuff doesn't work, right? But you can, instead of running off like any sort of good um, uh, sort of employee of a manager, you can go back before you go implementing for a year or two and ask clarifying questions, right? To say, so when you said this, what did you mean by this, right? And have that full on back and forth, which often will not be fully obvious to you that this is happening because it will come in dreams and other things that happen in your life. And again, archetypal manifestation will come into play because your job, right, as the advisee, mentee, employee of the muse, is to discern the overall meta pattern of all the sort of things she's throwing at you across your body signals, signals on your money flow and how that's increasing or decreasing in your life, conversations that you have with loved ones, drama, sort of melodrama that's happening in your life, dreams that happen. All of these paint a kaleidoscopic picture of guidance for you in your life. And part of the issue with the modern world is the only signal we accept is like written alphabetic print prose in a linear format, on email. And that is like that much of the signal that's actually coming to you as a human being. So anyway, so that will send something out on in the next couple weeks. It's sort of teed up for like the New Year's resolution sort of seasonal wave. And then the last thing that literally just came up as Gary and I were chatting on video before we started the session. Um, so she hasn't even agreed to do this yet, but I just want to sort of throw this out there. I asked her if it was okay to mention this, and I have her consent and permission. Um, there's been a lot of stuff going on in the online cohort that we're doing right now. And just with, a few of the advisees that we've been working with around mothers and daughters. Mothers and daughters. Uh, specifically where the advisee, i.e. you, are the daughter, the grown adult daughter. You may have your own daughters, but the key action here is between you and your elder mom. I'm just going to throw out a few keywords here, sort of the grief that is in you as you reflect on things that have happened, dynamics and patterns that are happening between you and your mom. The larger realization of the intergenerational trauma and patterns that have been passed down from your mom to you, but also which your mom is not, it's like she got it from her mom and her mom got it from her mom, right? And it's sort of like, oh my gosh, it's like, is my daughter or any woman that I come to mentor and caretake in my life going to have this whatever DNA, mythopoetic DNA as well? The grief, the anger, the potential reconciliation, and then how all of this impacts your life right now, your career, your love relationships, your bliss, the healing of your wounds, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I'm just touching on some of these things. And the idea is for Gowrie to hold either a workshop or a multi-week session without me involved. And the topic basically would be mothers and daughters. And I think it would be live on Zoom. And we would figure out what the structure and everything else. Because she brought this up. She was saying something, this idea just kind of came out of me. I mean, I see this pattern of mothers and daughters a lot in my work, obviously. But I think that in terms of leading a session that's specifically on this topic, I was like, Gary, this is something that you would do. It's not my place to really sort of do this, right? And she agreed. So anyway, if you're interested in that, please email me directly as well, and we'll figure out the interest and see if we can kind of make something happen there. So anyway, those are the 3 sessions that uh, are on deck. You heard it here first. The emails for these things aren't going to go out for weeks. Uh, or never if there's no interest. And that's okay too. That's okay too. Okay, so with that out of the way, uh, let me now enter into the meat of our time here together and go ahead and start the process of setting our sacred space, um, uh, in which, I wanted to get all those announcements out of the way before we actually did this. So as we set sacred space together, what we would like to do here from this point forward is to create a space together, which is devoid of fear, threat, and control, in order for us to open to higher guidance from within our own selves. Um, uh, and higher guidance, however you define it. It could be a muse, it could be a higher guide, it could be intuition, it could be instinct, hairs on the back of your neck. The downloads you get, great ideas you get when you're in a shower, right? Or on a long run. Uh, a safe sanctuary space for all of us to be able to relax and surrender with no feeling of danger or threat so that we can partake of the nourishment, the emotional nourishment and the spiritual nourishment that comes from being in sacred space together in a group. And in order to open and hold the sacred space that we want to have here together, I will propose, as I always do, that we all follow the 4 principles of proceeding in sacred space. Number 1, confidentiality, standard Vegas rules. What happens in sacred space stays in sacred space. Now, that's the rule for in person. In Bali, we will be holding sacred space. And online, we will be holding sacred space. But here online, the stream is public, the replay will be public. So the way we handle that online is via anonymization. So if you would like to be anonymous, you don't have to be anonymous. But if you would like to be, you would just go into the Crowdcast stream, go into edit profile, change your username to Harry Potter, sort of Mickey Mouse, what have you, and then come back and continue chatting and interacting. Number 2, the second principle is that there is, as much as possible, to the best of our ability, we would like to refrain from creating any feeling of threat or fear or controlling in others through our interactions, but also more subtly in our own selves. So we try our best to refrain from threatening ourselves as well. Right? And this is obviously, this covers malicious, you're a jerk kind of things, but also covers things that are well-intentioned. So there are no interventions here. We don't fix, we don't do tough love. We don't say, this is going to hurt me more than it hurts you, but you need to hear this. It's not that that's bad. There's a time and place for that. But because it is of the provenance of control and fear and threat, you better do this or else you're not going to get better. We simply don't do that here. We push it out back into the profane world. In here in sacred space, there's nothing wrong with that. But the minute we do that, we've lost our sacred space. And there are certain things we need to get done that we can only get done in sacred space. So we maintain sacred space for an hour or two, get our things done. And then we can go back out into the profane and do this to each other if we want. So said another way, we are holding space here for each other to be afraid, to be anxious, to be happy, to be relaxed, however we are, and to be okay with that and to hold space for that. The third principle is that there is no commerce. So in sacred space, nothing may be sold. I cannot sell you anything. Gary cannot sell you anything. Please refrain from selling things to each other in the chat. We are here for your energy, not for the things you bring. We are here for what you are, not for what you do or provide. It's not about your value add, it's about you. And this covers not just things you sell for money, but things you recommend that you have no association with, like a book or something else. Because even a recommendation is a well-meaning, but veiled threat. Because if you have a headache and I'm like, well, take this for your headache. The implication is that if you don't do this, your headache will continue. And that is a kind of threat. It's well-intentioned, but again, in clean, pure, sacred space, we try our best to not even do that. Uh, and the fourth principle, a corollary of everything above, finally, is that there is no expectation of participation. So there's no pressure to do anything in sacred space. You can come, you can go. You don't have to say hello or bye. You come and go as you please. You can chat, not chat, ask questions, not ask questions. You can participate in the exercises or not. Doesn't matter. Again, because the nourishment comes not from what you do or don't do, what you agree with or don't agree with, but rather it comes from the held space itself, from our collective presence and attention, devoid of fear, threat, or control for each other. Right? It's like this potluck or this delicious stew of nourishing sacred space, nourishing absence of fear, threat, and control that we all then take nourishment from, as much as we want, only if we want. Again, we are here for what you are, not from what you do or provide. Okay? And all of us together here will tend to amplify that. So this is what I propose. And if you are not okay with that, that's okay. There's no fear, threat, and control for you to come here or stay here. But that is where we're going in the next 30 seconds. So before we do that, we will take a pause and give you a moment to withdraw from the group if that's not what you want to do, and that's totally okay. We'll still hang out with you later in Profane Space. I'll still send you emails, and we'll all still be friends. No worries at all. Okay. So I'll just take a moment now to pause and let everyone make their selection on whether they would like to stay. Okay. All right. And now for the rest of us, we will now move forward together into our shared sacred space. And as we cross the threshold now into our shared sacred space, I will just gently remind everyone, including myself, that in this space, we will do our best to observe the four principles: confidentiality / anonymization, no fear, threat, or control, no fixing, no interventions, no commerce, no recommendations, and no expectation of participation. All right. All right. So welcome to our shared sacred space for December 2022, our last session of the year, and a very eventful, beautiful year. And our topic for the session will be how to unblock your life flow. So the fairy tale Gary selected for this session led us into taking an even deeper, more nuanced look into the nature of the golden thread, right? This theme, this archetype that we first began to explore in early 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic, and how the golden thread actually leads us through the windy, labyrinthine, serpentine path of desire and bliss. We'll start with a fairy tale from the European tradition that surprisingly sort of talks about how the golden thread seemingly gets blocked, and then what we can do to unblock it to continue on this windy path in our lives, in the labyrinth of our lives. Okay. And so I'm going to invite Gary on screen now, just to tell us about the story she selected and to read it for us. Hi, Gary.
Hi, Artie. Hi, everyone.
Welcome back. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so a European fairy tale this time.
All right.
So this is again from the Andrew Lang collection,
Okay.
right? And it's called The Gold Spinners. So this is like a classic name, and like I had to stop right there and say, okay, we're diving into this. Right. So yeah. So that's
You want to just read it? Let's do it.
let's do it. So okay, so the story is called Gold Spinners. It also has another name, The Water Lily. But I love the Gold Spinners part of course. So the story goes, once upon a time, in a large forest, there was an old woman and 3 maidens. Right? So we have the motif of the 3 sisters. All of them beautiful, but the youngest was the fairest. And the hut they lived in this forest was completely hidden by trees. So no one actually saw them. got to see their beauty by day or by night, by any season. They were completely hidden and very busy, because the old woman kept these girls very busy, very hard at work. And from morning to night, they had to spin gold flax into yarn. And as soon as one bundle was done, there would be another bundle to do. So on and on, they had absolutely no rest. And the thread had to be very fine, very even, done in the right way. And when it was done, it would be locked up in a secret chamber by the old woman. And that was that, right? Now, every 2 or 3 times every summer, the old woman would go on a journey. And before she went, she would give, for the number of days she was gone, she would give work for each maiden and say, in my absence, you have to spin these many bundles of gold flax into yarn. Right? But the girls, apart from this, knew nothing about where the gold flax came from, where the yarn would go, where the old woman went on her journey. They knew nothing, right? They just knew what they were told to do. And when the old woman would go out on one of these journeys, she would warn the 3 maidens and say, don't let your eyes wander, and on no account speak to a man, because if you do, your thread will lose its brightness and all kinds of misfortunes will follow. You don't want that, right? So she would remember to give this warning every time. And the girls would be like, yeah, right. Like, what are the odds of us speaking to a man, right? So they wouldn't think much of it. And they would get to work. Now, one of these journeys, on the 3rd day after the old woman left, a young prince who was hunting in the forest got separated from his companions and got lost. And he finally flung himself down a tree, fell asleep. And then he woke up and he saw a narrow footpath. So he got hopeful and he followed it. That led him straight to the small hut. And the maidens were just sitting at the door, chatting, talking to themselves. And they saw this man approaching. And the 2 elder sisters were afraid because they remembered the old woman's warning. And they said, let's go back in. But the youngest was curious. She was like, I've never seen anyone like him. So I'd like to have a look. They begged her to come in. She wouldn't. So they left her and went back in. And the prince approached her. He introduced himself, told her that he lost his way in the forest and he was tired and he was hungry. And so the youngest maiden, she went in, brought food for him and set the food before him and started to chat with him. And they had a delightful conversation. It was just so fun. She completely forgot the old woman's caution. And she just chatted with him for hours. Now, in the meantime, the prince's companions had looked for him everywhere. They went back and took the news to the king. So the king sent a search party. So all of this was going on. So finally, after 3 days of searching, they found the hut. And they saw the prince there. He was still sitting by the door, and he was just so happy in this maiden's company. And so when he was leaving, he told the maiden that he would come back. He promised her he would come back and take her back to his father's court. And so all of this done, and the maiden went back into her room and she said, oh, I need to make up for lost time. I need to start spinning. And as she sat down to her wheel, to her dismay, the thread had lost all its brightness. And that's when she remembered the old woman's warning. She started to cry because she didn't know what other misfortune would follow now. And when the old woman returned, she didn't have to be told what happened. She just took one look at the thread, and she knew what happened. She was furious, and she told the maiden she had brought down misery on herself. Right? And the maiden couldn't figure what to do. And finally, when she just couldn't bear it any longer, now she couldn't even spin. She had to just assist her sisters to kind of wind up the yarn. So she went out and called out to a raven. Now, as a child, she had learned to speak the language of birds. She called to the raven and asked for help. She said, "Can you go to the king's palace and tell the prince that this misfortune has befallen me, and can you please come take me away?" And so the raven did that, went to the king's castle, and in the palace garden, luckily, the raven found the wind wizard's son, who could understand the speech of birds. So it gave him the message to convey to the prince. And the prince, in return, when he heard this, he was very sad. He asked the raven to take back a message and said, "Be ready on the 9th night, because I'll come and take her away." And so the message was relayed back. The maiden was very happy, and she couldn't wait, right? And then on the 9th night, the prince, along with an armed troop, came back into the forest. And very cleverly, the last time while he was leaving, he had marked all the trees to kind of figure the way in and out. So, and it was a moonlit night, so he could just come in with the help of the trees that he had marked. And so he came to the maiden, and she was just so happy that he had come to fetch her. And she left with him, took her on the saddle, and they rode out. In the morning, when the old woman found out that the youngest girl hadn't come to work, she just knew what happened. She knew she had escaped. And so she went and collected 9 different kinds of, nightshade and herbs, mixed them up, tied them up in a cloth and turned into a magic ball, bewitched it, and threw it into the wind to go after the maiden. And by this time, they had already got out of the forest, but they had now come to a river that they had to cross. And the bridge was so narrow that only one rider could cross at a time. And so the prince and maiden were riding right in the middle of the bridge when this magic ball flew by and frightened the horse. And so when the horse just lifted up and reared and just threw the maiden into the river below, and the current was really strong. Right now, before anyone could realize what even happened, she was gone. And the prince tried to jump in, but his men, they were like, no, the current is just way too strong for you. So they held him back, and there's nothing anybody could do. And so when he came back, he shut himself up for 6 weeks in a secret chamber. He wouldn't eat, he wouldn't drink. He was so filled with grief that he became so ill that the king was completely alarmed. So he sent for the wind wizard's son. And he said, "There's an old wizard in Finland who knows more than anyone in my kingdom. So can you please send word to him to come and help me?" And so the wizard came, and he told the king that this illness on your son is because he lost his beloved, and this is what happened, and he's grieving. So, the wind brought this illness on your son, and the wind will take it away. So he needs to get out, go outdoors, go out into the wind. And so the prince was, made to go outdoors, and he slowly recovered. And he told his father everything that happened. And the king said, "Well, just forget the maiden, just marry someone else." But the prince said no, right? And a year later, as he was wandering, he suddenly came on this very bridge where he lost the maiden, and he recalled the entire incident, and he cried bitterly. And he thought, "I would give everything that I have to just have her once more alive." And in the middle of this grief, he heard a voice singing, right? And he looked around, and he couldn't see anyone. And the voice came again. And it was a very sad voice and a sad song. And it said, "Alas, bewitched and all forsaken, 'tis I must lie forever here. My beloved no thought has taken to free his bride that was so dear. He still looked around. He looked under the bridge. There was just no one. And all he noticed was this yellow water lily floating on the surface of the water. And he thought, flowers don't sing. But that's it. Everything was quiet. He didn't know what to do. And then he suddenly remembered the sisters, the gold spinners. And he said, if I go there, maybe they would know something that they can explain to me. And he went into the forest, went to the hut, and he found the two maidens. He told them what happened to the sister a year before. And he told them about the song, told them about the water lily and nothing else. And the sisters listened to all of this and told him that the water lily was their sister. She was not dead. She was transformed by the magic ball. And so they gave him a cake of magic herbs and said, eat this before you go to bed. And when he did that in the night, he dreamed that he was living in the forest and he could understand all that the birds said to each other. And the next morning, when he woke up and he went out, he listened to the birds and he could actually understand everything they said. And right as he was thinking about this, there was a thrush that said to a magpie, I can't understand the simplest thing. Why are men so stupid? It's a year since this maiden transformed into a water lily, and she sings so sadly every day so everyone can hear her. Yet no one comes to her rescue. And this former bridegroom who went over the bridge a few days ago heard her singing, and he just didn't understand what he was supposed to do. And so the magpie replied, well, if he keeps listening to the words of men, she's only going to stay a flower forever. But if he only took the matter to the old wizard of Finland, then the matter would get resolved. And then the prince was so excited to hear this. And he wondered, how am I going to reach the wizard of Finland? Right? And then immediately he saw a swallow flying and then saying to another swallow, come, let's go to Finland. We can build better nests there. And the prince seized this opportunity. He called out and he said, my dear friends, can you do something for me? Can you go ask the wizard of Finland, how do I restore a maiden transformed into a flower back to her own form? And then the swallows left. And then several weeks went. He wondered if the swallows had forgotten his message. And as he was doing that, he was sitting in the garden. He saw an eagle flying right above him. And then the bird descended and addressed the prince and said, this is what the wizard of Finland says. Go to the river and smear yourself all over with mud, and then say from a man into a crab, and you'll transform into a crab. Go into the water and swim right down to the water lily's roots, loosen them from the mud, and then hold it tight with your claws. Let the water flow all over, right? All over the flower. And then drift with the current downstream. You will come to a mountain ash tree, and near this tree there's a large stone. Stop there, and then say from a crab to a man and from a water lily to a maiden, and you will both be restored. Now, when the prince heard this, he was sort of full of doubt and fear and this seems complicated. How am I going to do this? And then a crow called out to him and said, why do you hesitate? Has the old wizard ever been wrong? Have the birds ever deceived you? All you have to do is just go and do this and end the woman's sorrow. And then the prince thought, okay, nothing worse than death can happen, right? And death is better than this endless sorrow that I'm in. So he got on his horse, went to the bridge, and he heard the water lily's song. And when he heard that, he just didn't hesitate any longer. He did everything the wizard asked him to do, smeared himself with mud, said man to a crab, went into the river, pulled the water lily's roots out of the mud, swam downstream, kept looking for the mountain ash tree for quite some time before he finally saw it. And he stopped near the tree on the stone and said, from a crab to a man, from a water lily to a maiden. And to his delight, he had become a prince again. And the maiden, she was 10 times more beautiful than before, with a beautiful yellow robe, sparkling with jewels. And she was delighted too. She thanked him for freeing her from the cruel witch's power and willingly consented to marry him. Right? But when they came back to the bridge, the horse was nowhere to be seen because the prince thought he'd been a crab only for a few hours. In reality, he was underwater for more than 10 days. Right? And so he was wondering, how would he get back to the palace? And he saw this splendid coach coming towards him. It was driven by these 6 horses. And they went back in that coach only to find that the king and queen were mourning the son's death because, he'd been gone for so long and no one could find him. The horse had come back all by itself. And they were just delighted not only to see their son, but also, the maiden that he loved. And so a wedding was arranged, it was celebrated, there was feasting, there was merrymaking. And then sometime afterward, the prince and his bride were sitting in the garden and a crow called out to them and said, "Aren't you just ungrateful creatures? Have you forgotten the 2 poor maidens who helped you in your distress? You should go and rescue them. And have no pity on the old witch. These 3 maidens were princesses. She stole them away when they were children, with all the silver utensils. And that's what she turned into gold flax. So poison is the only fit punishment for her." And so the prince was, instantly ashamed of having forgotten his promise, set out at once. And he went back to the hut, and thankfully the old woman was away. And the maidens had already dreamed that he was coming. So they were all ready. And they had already made a cake in which they put poison and left it on the table. When the old woman came back, she looked at the cake and she was so tempted. She greedily ate it and she at once died. And after her death, they found the secret chamber in the hut where there were like 50 wagon loads of gold flax. And there was more. There was yarn and more gold buried. And so they razed this hut down to the ground. And the prince and his bride and her 2 sisters lived happily ever after. So that's the story. Artie, are you here? Hi.
Whew. Thank you for reading that story. I'm so lucky. I always get to hear these stories twice. Yeah, we could do a week-long thing just on this story and probably Snow White. So let me start with my usual question, which is, where do you enter into that story?
So this was interesting for me. Like I said, just with the title, it was like something, just clicked. And when I read the first few lines of the story, it resonated with the usual archetypes, that especially Snow White that we've dealt with just 2 months ago. Because there is the old woman, there is the suppressing of the young feminine, making them work hard. There's that typical archetype we're very familiar with. But what caught my attention immediately was the gold flax and the golden yarn.
Yes.
Right? And literally, this story literally has the golden thread in it as a key thing. And I got very excited when I saw that. I was like, oh, good. This story is going to tell us that, this is how the golden thread is spun, and this is how it flows out, and this is how everything happens. And when I finished reading the story, I was like a little disappointed. Because we've never come across this. We've been doing golden thread since March 2020, right? And I've never heard of a golden thread losing its brightness.
Right.
Like that was depressing.
Right.
And what was all this about? Right? So I kind of like, should we even do the story? I don't know. And I went to bed, just like the prince, do something like this and go to bed. And this is what was like very interesting that happened. I fell asleep, and I think it was a few minutes or half an hour, I don't know. I woke up from sleep, and I had this mind voice saying, but she was hoarding the golden thread. The golden thread was blocked. She was hoarding it.
Like the witch.
Yeah, the witch.
Yeah.
The witch was hoarding it. That's the key. That's the clue. I was like, okay, all right. So I don't know what that means, but we're doing the story. Right? If you had to wake me up and tell me this, we're doing the story.
Okay, can we just pause for I mean, we cannot go into this rabbit hole because we already have too much content for the session, but what did you say? You went to sleep, and a few minutes later you woke up and heard a mind voice?
Yeah.
That gave you the key to the whole thing.
Yeah. Right on cue for, talking about the muse, but
right on cue, talking about the muse. So this is one of the many ways the muse comes to you. Those of you, it looks like we're going to end up doing this mother-daughter thing, but yeah, there's a whole other session on like, what is this mind voice that comes on, like with such precision, hitting her mark, delivering the exact thing, and then it's like, okay, that's it. I have to go. I can't stay. Here it is. And she just, okay, talk to you later. Love you. Bye.
Yeah.
And that was kind of basically the clue to the whole story.
Yeah. So I mean, the story is like already so rich, right? I mean, we've got so many symbols here that we've already done before. We've done the crab, we've done the water, we've done the river, we've done, we've done the sad song, language of the birds, going into the forest, coming back. We've done all of this. When we read those symbols, it's like, we know what this means now. We've got this vocabulary in these sessions.
Yeah, we have 12 hours of sessions where we talk about this. Yeah.
When we talk about these things.
Right.
But then we have this gold flax thing, and like it loses its brightness. Like, okay, now we're talking. What is this thing now?
That's the thing where like, wait, what?
Yeah. So that's what caught my attention.
So, okay, so before, gosh, there's so much I want to say here, but for everyone who may be new to this session, I just want to say really quickly, the way we read myth, fairy tale, dream in sessions like this with our advisees and one-on-one and small group cohort advising groups is we read these things mythopoetically, which is just a fancy way of saying any scenario in a dream, in a story, in a fairy tale, in a childhood memory or event that keeps coming to you again and again. Because you're like, well, that's just historical fact. No, it's not historical. I mean, it is historical fact, but there's endless clips of historical video you can pull from your childhood. And yet there's the same 3 clips that you keep pulling again and again and again, even into your 70s.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not just objective historical fact. Those are things that are pulled out specifically for a reason. And so anyway, we read them mythopoetically, which is just a fancy way of saying that we regard every major actor in the narrative as being a symbol of a different part of your inner self. Right? That's not the only way you can read these dreams. But this is the way we read them for the kind of work, the archetypal work that we do. So, so here, the witch is a part of you. The sisters are a part of you. The Daffy Prince is a part of you. Uh, the flower, the river, the evil witch, the flax, the silver that the flax is transmuted from. All are different symbols of different parts of you. And the way you read these is you start at the beginning, you press play, you let the narrative unwind, and then you track who's doing what to whom, who's getting together, who's trying to get together, what transformations are happening, who's better off at the end of the story, who's worse off, and then the message kind of comes forward from there. Okay, so that's just the basics. So if this were a year or two um, ago, we would have gone in and started talking about the symbol of the evil witch and the inner feminine and the inner masculine. There's tons of links Gary can, sort of share here on past sessions uh, where we've covered the symbolic significance of all of that. And we could still do it here. We will do it in part here. But the sort of meta point I want to bring out with the story is that over a longitudinal sort of period of time, right? So over weeks or months, or in this case, years. We've been at this for 2.5 years in this sort of live sacred space format. Okay. Is that the more you read dreams and fairy tales like this in your life, and here we're doing this as a group, so we have a shared experience. This is, by the way, the primary thing you do in sacred space. Okay. What happens between you and let's just call it the other side that's sending you these dreams is that you start to accrue a shared vocabulary. Okay. And the nuance of the message that can be sent to you and downloaded to you over time becomes richer, more nuanced, more precise, and more complex. Okay. So even with us here, it's like I say golden thread, everyone knows what we're talking about. Gary says inner masculine, inner feminine, language of the birds, and we're like, yeah, we know that, right? And so it's like, some friends that you always have dinner parties with over the course of like a decade, right? And after dinner, you always play charades. You always play these games, and the charade is like, I'm gonna make symbols, gestures, and then you're my partner, and you're gonna guess what I'm trying to say. If it's our first time playing together, I'll go like this, and you won't even know that I mean sounds like. Or I mean, oh, what are you doing? How come you don't even know that? But then after we'll suck at the game, right? But after we've played a few rounds, or maybe this is like the 6th dinner party we've had together, and we drew straws and we're partnered again. We're like, oh, we're gonna kick ass today. Because we have so much shared vocabulary that I'll just go like this. And you'll know what this means. It'll be like an inside joke we had from like 5 months ago when there was that story and I went like this, you didn't get it. And this was so stupid. How could this mean white chocolate? How could this mean white chocolate? Right. But that's what I was thinking. We're drunk, whatever. And it's stupid. We lost that round, but now we have this shared vocabulary. This, for whatever stupid reason, means white chocolate. And now 5 months later, we have a thing where I have to do white chocolate. And all I do is I do this. And you're like, really? White chocolate? And then we win. We guess it in 3 seconds. Okay. So it's exactly the same way with your dreams. So here in Live Sacred Space, which is like a collective dream group, we have been, as a group, communing, playing charades with the other side through myths, fairy tales, and we have been developing a shared vocabulary. Okay. So for those of you who've been following these sessions for a while, we know what language of the birds implies, right? It's being able to understand the language of the sacred, of the spirit realm, basically a fluency in myth, symbol, and archetype, right, is basically one way of describing the speech of the birds. Another bit of shared vocabulary is the golden thread itself. Every session we mention the golden thread, right? And here, what is happening is that the story is like, okay, you know what golden thread means. or you think you know what golden thread means, but I know what you think golden thread means. So now I'm going to be able to tell you something even more nuanced, right, and detailed about the golden thread because we have the shared vocabulary. It's like languages. If you don't speak English and you only speak French, and I don't speak French and I only speak English, we're just gesturing food, water, drink, maybe love. That's it. Okay. But as we have shared vocabulary, let's say we both speak French or we both speak English, we don't have to gesture. And also the sophistication and precision of the things we talk about goes much deeper. So instead of ordering food and hot dog, hamburger, cafe, whatever, when we actually share language, we can talk about things like justice, passion, bliss, enlightenment, which you cannot do unless you have a refined shared vocabulary. Okay. So here in the story knows what we think we mean by golden thread. The golden thread is the thing that leads you to bliss, right? And we expect when we see the golden thread, oh, it's rainbows and unicorns. We're done. We've had our bliss. We've achieved. We've attained. That's what we've been thinking. Okay. So this story is giving us a download at a very high level, right? And it's giving all these other symbols, right? The multiple transformations of the feminine. That's all in the background because we've already talked about that. So it's like, yeah. In the realm of all these things we've already talked about, let's go back to the golden thread. And I want to say something specific about the nature of mercy as a blessing, the nature of justice, and here it's like the nature of the golden thread. So it shows you the golden thread. We think rainbows, unicorns, and hold on to it. It'll get you through anything. The sort of slings and arrows of life. Just hold on a golden thread. That's all you need to do. And now it shows you the golden thread, and it diminishes. We're like, wait, what? It's like you have the golden thread, and the witch controls the golden thread, and uses the golden thread as a threat to keep you imprisoned in the witch's hut. We're like, huh? I thought golden thread means you're done, hooray, raise the trophy, smile. And now it's like the golden thread is like part of the prison entrapping us. And we're like, huh? It's like, is this work? Hello, can you hear me? Right? But we know it's clear, right? All the other symbols are clean and clear. All the other symbols are working perfectly, except this one. So it's not a mistake. It's not a bug. It's like, it's an actual thing. And we're like, shit, okay. Right. So when you think about the golden thread, in the original story where we talk about the golden thread, Theseus, Ariadne, the labyrinth, right? The Minotaur. We can link to that here, right?
Yeah.
It was Ariadne, the inner feminine, who gave Theseus the ball of golden thread, which is called a clue, C-L-E-W. Literally, she gives him the clue, as the inner feminine here gives the prince the clue over and over and over again. So we think everything's fine, you get the clue. But what happens actually in the Ariadne-Theseus story is Theseus takes Ariadne home with him on the ship. And then he abandons her. Right? By some accounts, he was instructed by Athena to abandon her. So maybe he wasn't a jerk, but there is this feeling of betrayal. And then, in many accounts, Ariadne is abandoned on the island of Naxos. And then she's like pissed. And then Dionysus, right, the god of not just wine, but like mystical ecstasy, appears and takes Ariadne as his wife. Right, so she is abandoned by the mortal Theseus, and it's like, oh my gosh, that jerk. But he was instructed to do that. And as a result of this twist in the plot, she elevates and becomes immortal. And she becomes queen of religious ecstasy.
Yeah.
Right, so this betrayal leads to her upgrade and like promotion and everything. So the point is, even in the original Golden Thread story, there is a winding way.
Yeah.
We forget, right, where we often lose sight of the fact that the golden thread that gets you there, right, that you hang on to and gets you to the ultimate whatever, is not a straight line, right? The labyrinth is winding,
Yeah.
right? So where it's almost in the Bill Stafford poem, right, where he talks about the golden thread, he says explicitly, you don't ever let go of the thread. It will get you through.
I was like that point when you said that,
Yeah.
it really hit me, because you said, oh, this is how the golden thread is. It's winding and it goes down and comes up, it diminishes and it comes back again. But that's just how it goes. And at a point I realized, in the Bill Stafford poem, I've put the link there, the way it is, right? The last line of the poem goes, you don't ever let go of the thread.
Yeah.
And there's one way of reading it, is saying, oh, you better not let go of the thread. You better hold on to the thread. Like that. That's one kind of reading it. And saying you should not let go of the thread. Once you find it, just hold on to it, never let it go. But then when you said this, it occurred to me that the sacred way of reading that line is a statement. You actually never let go of the thread, even if you tried. Like, even if you wanted to.
Yes. And I just pulled up the poem itself.
Yeah.
And another insight that's just hitting me right now is that this reality, that the bad things that happen to you in your life are also part of the golden thread, is actually coded in Bill Stafford's poem. I'll read it to you.
Yeah.
There's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you are pursuing. You have to explain about the thread, but it is hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen. People get hurt or die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. And so the way I originally, typically would read that, my own understanding is that you hang on to the thread, all this stuff happens, and you just hang on to the thread, and it will get you through tragedies, people getting hurt or dying, and you suffering and getting old. And now reading this in light of the download from this story, this very nuanced point about the nature of justice, the nature of the golden thread, is that while you hold it, you can't get lost. And it's not, despite that tragedies happen, people get hurt. It's that tragedies happen is the golden thread. People get hurt or die is the golden thread. And you suffer and get old is the golden thread. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread.
Yeah, that part really hit me. I'm like, wow, now that you read this, especially about the tragedies unfolding, and how in the story, that is precisely what the witch says. If this happens and the golden thread loses its brightness, miseries will unfold. You will have brought misery on yourself.
And yet, in the story at the 30,000 foot level, we know that is the only way to unlock all of the gold.
Yeah, that's the only way to kind of rescue and
the
recover.
Diminishing of the gold, like maybe losing prestige, people not knowing what the hell you're doing, saying what the hell you're doing with your life, is part of the winding way of the process. And you would also argue the evil witch is part of the golden, she's a part of you.
Yeah.
Right. So the evil witch is like the part we know from Snow White. She is a validation, the part of you that seeks validation.
Yeah.
Right. So she's hoarding the golden thread. But also she is the factor, she is the agent in the story that transmutes the silver into the golden flax and then turns the golden flax into the golden thread. So without the witch, there is no golden thread.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not like, oh, if only there were no witch, if only there were no tragedies. And the point is, these are all part of the golden thread. The diminished non-shiny golden thread is still a golden thread.
Yeah.
So for me, the topic of this session is how to unblock your life flow. So the key blockage here is, ironically, at this advanced level of nuance and explanation of the physics of the golden thread and your life flow, an advanced form of risk or danger is that the evil witch part of you who creates the golden thread, then hangs onto it too tightly, and all the gold remains buried. Right? And then the signal to you becomes reversed. Right? Because the signal we're looking for is golden thread means green light. Right? And when you hang on too tight, right, the golden thread signal reverse. Green means red, red means, whatever. And so when you think about the golden thread, typically you think, as soon as I see the golden thread, everything's going to be great. I'm done, and I don't have to worry, right? And it's funny because every time I read that poem by Bill Stafford, the one I just read, we talk about the golden thread. You post it on our Instagram, whatever. There's always a comment, and this isn't bad, right? I'm not making a criticism. Someone always comments, "Oh yes, thank you for this reminder, Artie. And I'm so glad I found my golden thread, 5 years ago, and I'm an artist now, and I follow the golden thread. Everything's great, all rainbows and unicorns, basically. And thanks for this reminder, but I got it, I got this, right?" And I read that, and it's not bad. It's just a different part of the labyrinth, right? But I read it, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know. That level of certainty is to me exactly what this story is trying to point to. When you're like, I figured out my path. I'm going to join this monastery. I'm a Buddhist now. I'm a therapist now. I finally found it. And hooray, you start cranking. And you crank for a while. And then inexplicably, you hit roadblocks. Right? Even after you found your bliss, you're like, I can't get out of bed. What the hell? This isn't working. It's not bringing in money. Is this really my bliss? Did I make a mistake? And the deeper pattern of the story is that, look, at the high level, at the 30,000 foot level, everything turns out fine. Right? But what happens when the gold shine diminishes and you're like, maybe this isn't my bliss. Maybe I took a wrong turn. This is the deeper thing that catalyzes and moves the entire thing forward. Right? The witch casts the spell of disaster. All these bad things are going to happen. Because when she says, the minute you meet this guy, the gold thread will diminish, you'll lose prestige. And all these bad things will happen. Like what kind of bad things? She says, all these bad things will happen. But let me read Stafford's version. Tragedies happen, people get hurt or die, and you suffer or get old. Oh my gosh, I have to avoid that. So you stay in the witch's hut and don't go out. But the minute you go out, right, at the high level, things start to move. At the local immediate level, it is disaster, right? The maiden loses her job, right? She's just an assistant now. The prince goes off and wants to kill himself because he loses the maiden. He finally learns the language of the birds through all this sort of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Still screws it up, right?
Yeah.
And so the nuance I pick up from this is that sometimes the way the golden thread works is that you think you found it, okay? But then you realize it seems like a false thread.
Yeah.
Okay. And the thing is, you keep going anyway.
Yeah.
Now, I don't mean to say, oh, if I think my bliss is acting and I'm not doing well in my acting career, it's a false threat. It's not working. Maybe I should go back to investment banking or whatever, right? I'm not necessarily saying that. If it were that simple, it would just be a formula, right? But it's more that sometimes when the gold thread you're following loses its luster, but there's still a thread you follow, right? That could be okay. Right? Because Stafford doesn't say there's a golden thread you follow. Right? We added that on from Ariadne.
Yeah.
Stafford said there's a thread you follow. It can possibly change colors over the course of your journey. And we know from the story, this thread comes from the silver, right? The feminine, which has been transmuted by the witch into gold. So without the witch, there is no golden thread. She is the one who is gestating and fermenting all this in the womb of the witch's hut.
Yeah.
So that's good. But then she hangs on too tightly and says, don't reconnect with the inner masculine, and then blocks the flow.
It's interesting about this point, particularly how this comes up, because this happened to me, in the last couple of weeks. Right. And I want to give this as an example of how the holding on too tight happens and how the blocking happens. It's a small example. I don't want to go into something too intense or too big for this, but just the last few weeks I've been sitting with this thing of, because I do photography as a hobby, as a part of my bliss. And I was like, I literally started questioning whether I was stubbornly holding on to certain styles of photography that I do because I believe it's my bliss, or am I doing it because it is my bliss? As in, do I feel bliss, or is it just because I've been telling myself it's my bliss and I must do it, I have to do it? And the moment that question came to me, of course, after a lot of thinking through and sitting with all these thoughts, when I asked that question, I was like, no. I'm not going to do, I must do it because it's my bliss. That's stupid. Like, that's not bliss. And that was the time I kind of decided, okay, I will stop doing this. In fact, I'm even going to sell most of my equipment off, not even have it and not think about it, because it's my bliss. It really won't hurt me if I sell it off and don't do it.
Yeah, when you told me you were selling your photography equipment, I fell off my chair. I was like, what?
My husband had like, like, what do you think you're doing? Yeah, so it was very difficult for me as I was making that decision and then saying, okay, I'm going to see this through. And this is what happened after that, when I told you this. And a couple of days later, you won't believe this. I had these muse downloads, as you say, right? I have these muse coming to me about visual narratives in ways I have not thought before. And I'm looking at her and I'm saying, why are you telling me this? I'm in the process of selling my camera. Right. And she's like, you're not selling all of it, right? You're still keeping like one piece with you. You can do the new narratives with that. You don't have to go back to the old styles.
So you've broken out of the witch's hut.
Yeah. So it's like, you see that pattern, right? It's like I was holding on too tight, and therefore I wasn't, there was no vision. I didn't have any vision of what I'm doing with it. And then the moment I said, okay, I'm not doing it if it's so full of pressure and threat and control. And the vision comes up. And I'm like, okay, so this is why I need to pick up the camera. Not because it is my bliss and I have to do it. But because I have a visual kind of narrative in my head, and then there's a vision and a story to tell. That's why I pick up the camera.
So you broke out of the witch's hut, but the gold of visual narrative, not a specific style of nature photography,
right,
is still buried under the witch's hut.
Yeah, and I guess there is a lot of circumambulation to go through now that I've done this shift, and the shift is not going to be easy. It's going to take its own path of learning and unlearning and all of those things. And that brings me to another point that I noticed in the story, is that when you recover the feminine, when you recover your vision, we always tend to think that life vision is just one thing. I do my healing, I go in, I recover the feminine, my vision, and that's it. I have a grand life vision that I can live for. And you know, that's just one vision. It's a vision statement on a board, right? And then you realize, after you do a few of these rounds,
the minute you put it on a poster, you know you're dead.
Yeah. And you're like, every round of healing that you do, every time you go and reconcile with a lost part of you, you come back, there is a new chunk of vision that comes and integrates into your life. So vision is like the trickling continuous thread in itself. Like a vision itself is a thread and not a single pellet, right? It's you keep getting it, it flows and flows. So you're really recovering it in stages. Every time you do a round, you come back with a piece of it. And so broadly, you can say the feminine is recovered in stages. Like in the story, like the sisters, the first sister is recovered first and she's rescued first. And then you go back in, you rescue the two sisters again. Like you don't do it everything at once. Why not just rescue all the sisters at once? Right?
No.
But no, it couldn't be done. It had to be this way. And every time they go out of the forest, they kind of go and spend some time away, 6 weeks, 1 year, 6 months, 1 month. And then they go back in. Every single time, there's a new thing that comes out. Like, you know, once he goes in, he learns to dream. Second time he goes in, he learns to, you know, speak the language of birds. The third time he goes in, he brings back the sisters. It's like, you just keep going in stages.
And at each point, he loses the thread.
Yeah.
Right. He doesn't realize the song is about his wife. He doesn't realize he can go in and, you know, rescue her. And then even after he promises the sisters he'll come back and get him, he forgets again. The crow has to remind him.
Yeah.
So it's like the inner masculine is always forgetting, because the minute you lose touch with the source of vision, which is the feminine, you start winding, and you know it's like a rudderless ship, and that's actually part of the process. So all these delays where you're like, why is he so incompetent? At the bird level, or at the muse level, they're like, why are these humans so dumb? But at the human level, it's like, my dumbness is part of the process. But because at this point, people who are listening to this may be like, okay, Artie, Gary, this is great, but so given all this, what is the secret, right? How do we know the golden thread is the actual golden thread and not just a false gambit to get validation and prestige like the witch? Right. So you're telling us all this stuff. What's the secret key to give me an edge to put one over on life and win life and be better, you know, get enlightenment faster than other people? Okay. And so the answer is failure. Right? You can't know what a real golden thread versus a fake golden thread is until you've bought lots of fake golden threads with years of your life and effort. You know, and then realize, fuck, I fucked it up again. That's the only way you develop your palate for knowing what is real truffle, what is real cumin, what is real olive oil, because you've tasted a lot of fake olive oil. Right? Your palate starts to develop, and then you instantly start to recognize it. And you taste the olive oil in the marketplace, and you're like, you don't even fight with the vendor. You know, you're like, if I get you arrested, there's going to be another 3 that pop up in your place. You just taste it. Oh, it's very good. And it's like, oh yeah, it's way cheaper than the other guy. It's like, yeah, I know. But I'll come back. I'm going to look around. He's like, okay. And then you just never go back because it's fake olive oil.
Yeah.
Right. And so the action of the golden thread is not always obvious. Losing the thread when the prince forgets so many times is part of the calibration process to develop your ability to see the golden thread. For instance, learning how to walk.
Yeah.
How would you learn how to walk if you don't stumble and fall? If you never stumble and fall, you have no idea what to avoid. I'm walking through the forest. I see an exposed tree root. And I'm running, and I'm like extra careful and slow down. I delicately, sort of tiptoe past the tree root. How do I know how to do that? Obviously, because I've tripped over tree roots before, something similar.
Yeah.
So the stumbles, hopefully they don't kill you, right? But the stumbles are a part of the path as well.
Yeah.
So how do you calibrate? How do you learn the ability to see like real truffle or real golden thread? You just continue going forward. Tragedies happen, people get old and die, you suffer. And then you realize, and this is a great example of shared vocabulary coming into power in the story, where the prince has gone through all this. Okay. He found the princess in a hut in the woods because he got lost, right? Yeah. And then it's like the love of his life, and then he loses her, and then he has a dream, and the prince of the Wizard of Finland, and he gets everything. He gets to this point, and then the instruction. Because typically we're like, oh, once I find the answer, once I get the download, everything will be fine. Once I find the golden thread, everything. Well, he found the golden thread. He got the answer. And the answer was turn into a crab and go into the dark, muddy water, which is basically to go back into grief.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of self-help healing. It's like, oh, I've done 30 years of therapy. I did my night sea journey 15 years ago, I'm done. And so this answer now of I need to go back into the well of grief, that's not acceptable. I'm not going to do that.
And the prince here, we know this from the story again. When he lost the maiden, he had shut himself up in dark secret chamber for 6 weeks without food or water. He'd already done one whole cycle of grieving.
Yeah.
And we think that's it. He's done his grief, right? When he's done
more
everything.
than that, even at the beginning of the story, getting lost in the forest is a form of grief.
Yeah.
Right. You're lost in the forest. You have no food. You have no water. You're all scratched up.
Yeah.
You're in grief. Your whole life is fucked up. That's where you meet the maiden.
Yeah. So he's already done like two rounds in the beginning, and now the wizard tells him you have to go again. Right.
So you have to go again. Yeah. And you have to go willingly. There's no more getting lost. There's no more, oh, this happened. It's you willingly turn into a crab, which is a deep symbol of the feminine, actually. Crab is feminine. Cancer, the astrological sign, associated with cold, moistness, associated with silver of the moon. So he is told to become the silver cutlery of the crab that then transmutes into the gold of the water of the yellow flower.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
and so
really
he is told, no more tricking you into the night sea journey.
Yeah.
The next step is you go down willingly.
Yeah.
Just like in The Devil's City Brother, the classic archetypal story I use to teach grief. The second time the Devil's City Brother goes into the underground cave, he goes willingly.
Yeah.
Right? Like a baby running back into her mother's arms. Right? And all the power is there waiting for him.
Yeah.
So now the injunction, the instruction is, now you go down into tragedy, grief, everything, willingly. Not even passively. You actively say the words, man into crab. And his first reaction is like, the fuck? You're fucking kidding, right? Are you kidding? No, hell no. And then the crow or whatever bird comes in, and the muse has done this to me like countless times.
Yeah.
I speak from firsthand experience. The muse comes in the form of the crow, the spirit world comes in, and it's like, okay, asshole, let's just like take a step back and look at the ledger, right? The log of our interactions.
Yeah.
When this happened, when this happened, when this happened, when this happened, you know, you should be dead. You shouldn't even be here. And because of all these things, you are here and you are on the path to your bliss. And now we tell you the next thing because you're ready now for this next level. And now you're getting scared and you're getting cold feet and you want to back out. Again. Again.
Right.
And that's fine. You're human. That's fine. That's cool. But it's like, have we, literally the Crow says, have we ever steered you wrong? Number one. Number two, how much more proof do you need? You know, what else, what fountains of gold do we need to like, you know, bring down on your head before you like wake up and realize, right? We're in your corner. We're telling you what to do. This is how I describe it all the time. Yeah. At this point, I leave my days unstructured. I do not schedule any, I mean, other than the cohorts that I sort of do. Even now, we're trying to move away from hard schedules. So that I can do my best to listen to the muse hour by hour. Yeah. And the way I describe it to friends is, on a good day, I will actually comprehend what she's trying to tell me. And I will have the cojones to actually attempt to do what she tells me to do. And on a really good day, I'll do it and not expect any result immediately. Right? I just shut up and do it. Yeah. And that's why for me, just to share one more thing, when people ask me, what is my bliss? In mixed company, I'll be like, yeah, healing, you know, restoring the power of the sacred in our world, you know, just helping the world heal, blah, blah, blah. But that's not the real sort of secret of what my bliss is. For me, my bliss is I follow the muse. Right? That's my bliss. Yeah. Whatever. So if tomorrow she wants me to be a plumber and shut down all my healing stuff, I'll protest for a couple of weeks as I usually do, and then I'll cave and do it. But the way the muse will do it won't be like, okay, you have to be a plumber now. I'll wake up one morning and all of a sudden be struck by this fascination with like copper piping versus like PVC piping and fluid dynamics. And what is the business model of a local plumber anyway? Can I franchise? Can I become the nationwide, whatever? And I'll just be fascinated with this. And that's how she will light the fire in me. And, you know, one day I'm not a healer anymore. I'm a plumber. That's how she'll do it. Yeah. So when I say I'm a healer and this is all I do, that's, you know, if I hang on too tight, that's the witch's hut. So here, there are multiple rounds of reconciliation of the masculine and feminine. The golden thread doesn't end. Even the Wicked Witch. The Wicked Witch is killed by the poison, but we know killing in a dream, death in a dream, is a symbol of transformation. Yeah. So the Wicked Witch part of you, the part that hangs on too tight, the part that wants validation, wants control, wants certainty, wants a guarantee that if I go down this bliss path, I will have a good career, and this part of you never actually dies. Yeah. It either aligns or gets suppressed and then comes back later. Yeah. Right? And just like the maiden, everyone thought the maiden was dead, but she wasn't. Everyone thought the prince was dead, and he wasn't. No part of you dies. That's part of the larger reconciliation of this golden thread thing. It's like even the evil, sort of shameful, embarrassing parts of you, they will always be a part of you. And the minute you realize that, you're like, okay, fine. Okay, fine. Let's just see what we can do. Even the spirit world, right? The realm of the birds, looking at this daffy inner masculine, continuing to forget. After a while, they're like, okay, the world of the muses, they're like, okay, we work with humans. Period. Just deal with it. If you don't want to work with humans, go to the next, sort of location and do a different assignment there. But if you're here, you're working with humans, and this is what we're working with, people. This is what we got. So just relax and get on with it. And I'm like, yeah, sorry in advance, my bad. I'm gonna be a coward. I'm gonna be afraid to like become the crowd. But here, finally, the muse is like, how much more proof do we? What more do we need to do to convince you that it's okay? You know, you can take the leap. And to his credit, when you do remind him, he's like, fine. And to a crowd, I'm probably not going to be able to turn back. This is probably a scam. Man to a crowd. And he turns in, he goes in, you know, and there's quantum stuff around. He thinks it's a couple of hours. It's actually 10 days. Time, you know, in the fairy world, time like loses all, you know, Rip Van Winkle, all the rest of it, recurring theme. Because you're out of the profane, you're in the sacred. He goes in, he gets her back. Okay. But the cycle, and then you say, oh, now I'm done. And it's like, no. Right? At the end of the story, it's prince and princess, king and queen. And what will happen at the next cycle? The queen will be sitting, sewing by the window, will prick her finger, 3 drops of blood will fall in the snow, and she'll be like, oh, if only I had a daughter, right, with lips red as blood, skin white as snow, and hair black as ebony of the window frame. And then we go again. The golden thread never ends. And even if you think you will lose it, that is part of the underlying action. Even if you think you suppressed it. Oh, I've been an accountant for 30 years. It's too late for me to follow my bliss. That's part of the golden thread action. Even the stumbles, the delays, the tragic, you know, sort of self-betrayals are part of walking. Right? There is no walking without the stumbles. There is no recovery of the feminine, right? Without the witch imprisoning you in the witch's hut.
Yeah. And here's another thing that comes to me as you're saying this, that this is also why it's so difficult to box a golden thread into categories. It's not like you can say that my golden thread is this profession.
Right.
It is this, you know, neatly made buckets of different fields and streams and professions. We would say, okay, this is what I'm going to be. It's so hard, and you and I have gone over this so many times. We still struggle to put a name to what we do.
Yeah.
We still struggle to kind of, what do we call ourselves? What do we say that we do?
No.
And I'm like, on most days, I don't know who I am or what I do.
Yeah.
And yet there are all these different things that come together, and I'm holding this thread and figuring out, and I'm always figuring out. But I can't say that, yes, this is the label.
I mean, we can sort of say it, but it's hard to say it out loud in the profane.
Yeah.
Because when we talk about things like living in the sacred, creating the life of your dreams, you know, practical workshop for working with the muse, what it really is we teach people how to archetypal manifestation create the life of their dreams. What does that mean? Does that mean I'm rich, I'm a billionaire, and everyone has to worship me? It's like, no. I mean, if that happens to be your dream, it's a rather profane dream, so I doubt it. Then that's what you will create. But when we say creating the life of your dreams, letting your bliss flow through, it basically means, you know, making you this sort of Maserati, finely tuned agent of expressing and manifesting the power of the muse and the goddess in our world.
Yeah.
Right, regardless of your gender. That's what, I mean, that's what the golden thread is. Right, and that's what we teach. So we call it healing, we call it bliss, we call it manifestation. But basically, when you sign up to really do this stuff with us for real, you're signing up to sort of become a part of this sort of thought and belief community where it's like we are recognizing we are portals, right, between this world and the other world. And there's all this power of the goddess and the feminine, basically, a vision that is trying to come through us into this world for whatever reason. And we're saying, like, we kind of see that, and we want to surrender to that, right, and subscribe to that, and let that happen through us.
And then you go ahead and say, you don't have to do anything, because everything you do, even the failures and the mistakes, are all part of the golden thread. So, okay,
Yes.
so we're done here. And then nothing to do. And
Nothing
people
to
are
do.
like, why have we signed up again?
Right. So, okay. So here's the issue, right?
Yeah.
So basically, what are we saying is, what have we said so far? So what this story is implying about the golden thread, we would normally think of the golden thread as something to quest for and find, to discover and hold, to hang on to, for bliss, for happiness, fulfillment, for enlightenment. Okay. Even in the Theseus Ariadne story, the golden thread, it's not like Jason and the Golden Fleece. It's not the thing we're questing for. It is a means to a larger narrative and circumambulation, right? So this story is saying, because the witch is also you and a part of the journey, because even when you suppress the golden thread and lose, it's not a mistake. You screwing up is also part of the golden thread. What this implies is that the golden thread is not something you are looking for. You better find it or else, you're thread and control. Rather, the golden thread is something that is you. You are the golden thread. That is why you cannot lose it. That is why you never let go of the thread. You are the thread. So when you think you lose it, it's losing its shine. It's still the thread, right? It's buried 50 wagon loads of flax under the witch's hut. It's still the thread. Yeah. Everything you do is actually the golden thread, even the stupid things you do. Okay. So then that brings us to it begs the question. Okay, so then fine. I'm the golden thread. I can't make a mistake. Fine. How do I know what to do moment to moment? How do I decide?
Yeah.
I mean, practical, right? Do I marry this person or not? Do I move forward with this relationship or job offer or not? If everything is the golden thread, right, I still have this experience of having to make free will decisions hour to hour.
Yeah.
So we want help with this. I mean, we come to you, Artie and Gary, we spend all this time, and all you're telling us is to do whatever, we want our money back. This is not helpful at all, right? Okay, fine. So let's go there.
Yeah.
Let's say you prefer, okay, suppressing I would prefer not to suppress the golden thread.
Yeah.
I would prefer the witch does not suppress it. Or, fine, if I have to go through this back and forth labyrinthine circumambulation, I'll be in the witch's hut, but can I be in the witch's hut for 1 year, not 10 years?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I lessen my suffering? Is there a hidden signal on how to navigate?
Right.
What we're realizing actually in our live cohort right now, the one that creating the life of your dreams online that we're in the middle of. Yeah. People are describing their archetypes. Yeah. They're describing the witch's hut that they have been imprisoned in for the past 25 years. Honestly, with courage. And when I look at the witch's hut they're in, I'm like, well, you're not stupid. You must be getting paid to live in the witch's hut. What are some of the benefits? And when they list out the benefits, I'm like, you're getting paid a lot to live in the witch's hut. And they're realizing I'm in the witch's hut and life is good.
Yeah.
I'm getting paid validation, money, comfort, security, stability. I mean, I'm not moving forward, but life is good. Right? So what I always say is creating the life of your dreams. Some people are realizing I'm pretty close to the life of my dreams already. Yeah. And that doesn't mean it was pointless to sort of do this exercise. First of all, appreciating your life as it is at this new level is itself a kind of rebirth. But secondly, it's like okay, if I'm going to risk this, leaving the witch's hut, there better be a payoff.
Yeah.
Right? If you want me to leave Google to go work for Facebook, that's fine. But let me tell you what I'm making at Google, and you need to match that up or a lot better. And then I'll consider it.
Yeah.
I'll consider it. And that's good too, because then you get much more pickier about the archetype. Instead of like, oh, I think I want to be a something more creative, but I never do it. Of course you never do it. You're not going to get paid there 1/10 of what you get paid here. I don't mean just money. I mean everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So once you realize what archetype you're in and what you like about it, instead of saying, oh, I'm just stuck in life, it's like, no, 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 no. You're the sovereign creator of your life. If you're in this, you're getting paid.
Yeah.
Right. And if it's hard for you to leave, you're getting paid well.
Mm.
And that's okay. You can stay there. If you're happy, I'm happy. I'm your advisor. That's all I want.
Yeah.
Right. But then it raises the bar on both quality, sort of quantity and specificity. And that's why having this shared vocabulary with your muse is really important. The muse is like, oh, you want to sort of save animals, and be vegan and everything. But it's like, you're not just going to run off and do random stuff. It's like, okay, tell me more. How do I build a life that is this, what I have now, everything and better? Right. And that takes a lot of work under the hood. It's like, that's why we do these in live advising groups. Okay, so so we have this preference where we're like, how do I spend less time in the witch's hut? Well, one answer is maybe you like being in the witch's hut, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But you could say, the thing that blocks the golden thread, in this case, the witch's hut, your current life of comfort. Mind you, blocking it is okay. It's still part of the golden thread. You can say there's some pieces of the witch's hut that I like. I'm getting paid. I'm making good money, spinning. It's not hard. The witch likes me. So if the witch likes me, I'm safe. She is the scariest thing in this forest, right? And if I'm good with the witch, I'm done. I'm done.
Yeah.
But how do I get the maiden back sooner? There are a couple of clues in the story. You don't have to follow these, but it's just the clues. One is you discount the voice of fear, threat, and control.
Right.
The giveaway that you are in the witch's hut is the voice of fear. She says, do not talk to a man or else. Mm-hmm. Just like you with your photography. You're like, I like photography. I think photography is my bliss. The minute you realized there was something going on was the minute you threatened yourself.
Yeah.
Where you're like, it is my bliss. It is this good thing. So I better continue doing it or else. And it's like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
When you have to wave the stick around to get me to do my bliss, it's like, okay, hang on just a minute here. You waving the stick? What, you're going to hit me with the stick if I don't do my bliss? Come on.
Yeah.
Okay. So the minute you hear fear, threat, and control, don't talk to a man or else. It's like, okay, hang on a minute. Don't follow your desire or else all this bad stuff will happen. Okay, now I'm getting the compass reading of what is profane and sacred here.
Right.
So that's one tell.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other tell is when you have a reaction of fear to something. Like when the prince is told, you have to turn into a crab and you have to do it yourself. No evil witch. You don't get the evil witch to be a scapegoat anymore. If you're going to turn into a crab this next level, you're going to do it yourself. I'm not going to give you any injuries to make you all of a sudden not able to do your nature photography. You will sell your equipment yourself.
Yeah.
By your own hand. And you're like, are you kidding? And the voice of fear, the witch within you says, no way, forget it. And then the crow comes and says, okay, great. Now it's out in the open. Everyone's hands are on the table. Let's talk plainly as friends. I'm telling you what to do. You're terrified, right? And that's fine. And my rebuttal to you is, when have we steered you wrong?
Yeah.
How much more proof do you need?
Yeah.
And if we still have not given you enough proof, then do not turn yourself into a crab. Go back into the hut and make your money. And that's okay. We will wait for you. We are immortal, right? You are not, but in the next life, the golden thread will continue.
Right.
We can do this all day. We love you. Take your time.
Right.
Right. And then the prince discounts his own voice of fear, threat, and control, and he turns himself into a crab. When you get close to your bliss, you realize if I follow my bliss, in my life, there will be relationships, career opportunities, levels of prestige and status in the community that I will lose. My life as I know it now may implode. Right? So when you hear a screaming voice in you that says, no, 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 do not do it, do not do it, that is the crossroads.
Yeah.
Right? But that is a signal that you are in the crossroads, a decision point in the path. A third clue is, and we've seen this before, I won't spend a lot of time on it. When you make agreements with parts of your inner kingdom, right, you want to act in good faith. You promise the sisters you go back. You forget, of course. And then the crow reminds you, like, shit, okay, and you rush back and you deal with it. That's the way to do it. Right? He forgets the maidens, and then he goes back and gets them. So, meta point. Now, from the story, I have given you a formula for navigating and optimizing your golden thread journey. Do not listen to the voice of fear is probably number one. Now, the irony here is this. Because you are now like, okay, to do the golden thread properly, do not listen to the voice of fear, threat, and control. Deal in good faith, right? And this is how I get out of the witch's hut and move forward faster and recover my maiden and get to happily ever after faster.
Yeah.
Right? But you're like, wait a minute, didn't we also say screwing up and mistakes are also part of the golden thread?
Yeah.
So I don't have to do these things that Artie is saying, right?
Yeah.
So what do I do? Okay, so my answer is, I'm not telling you what you should do. That's a threat.
Yeah.
We are now in this double or triple nested container of sacred space. We're in sacred space, we said it. And then telling a story in sacred space is a container within in the container. And then in the container, we have sub-stories. Gowrie telling her story about the photography. Characters in the dream. The prince having a dream that tells him what to do. So we're like dream within a dream within a dream within a dream. It's very concentrated sacred space. So at this level, this is the last place I would ever say, you better do this or else.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will never do that because I'm good at what I do. So what I'm pointing out here is the pattern as revealed by the story. How to get things unstuck. And the guidance is, do not listen to fear, threat, and control. But the deeper point is, if you then say to yourself, I better do what Artie says, I better not listen to the voice of fear, threat, and control. You just fear, threat, and controlled yourself. And you're back in the witch's hut again.
Yeah.
Because you are threatening yourself. And then you say, brilliant. Good point, Artie. Good point. You got me. Good. Thank you. Thank you. Now you say, I better not threaten myself or else. Oh, you just did it again.
Yeah.
So you're like, what the hell do I do?
Yeah.
My answer is only if you want. Don't threaten yourself. Not because you're afraid of a bad consequence. The deeper reason why you don't threaten yourself is because there is no threat. Because think about it. If you listen to the witch, don't talk to a man, and stay another 10 years in the hut, that's okay. How long were the maidens in the hut? The story isn't clear. 10 years, 100 years? And in the end, everything turns out okay.
Yeah.
If you say, the witch said this, don't talk to the prince, and I won't listen to her, not because Artie told me to and because I have this self-help formula now, just because I'm curious about the prince.
Yeah.
He's got those nice eyes. I'm just gonna go talk to him. And if I get in trouble with the witch, yeah, that's fine. If I all of a sudden don't feel like talking to the prince, that's fine. If
It's
it
almost
leads
like,
to, yeah, stay,
yeah,
stay.
I mean, in the story, like the prince keeps forgetting every other time. Even the maiden, she actually forgets the old
She
woman's
forgets
warning.
all the time.
She forgets, and that's how she talks to him. She forgets she had spinning to do, and she
Yeah.
goes and finds out that it's lost its sheen.
I mean,
So
she forgot to go back and get her sisters too,
yeah, she forgot
because
too.
she
And
was
they
with
were
him.
at
The
the
crow had
skills.
to come in and tell him.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. So this forgetfulness, the role of memory, the sort of malleability of time, all of these are a part of the physics of it that I don't think we can get into. We're
yeah,
basically out
yeah.
of our time.
We have we so much to go into that as well, and particularly what I was thinking, and then this question came up that I think we can quickly blend into what we're saying already, is the distinction between bliss and golden thread. Like, how would you tell them apart, or are they apart at all?
Actually, I don't. I prefer to sort of pass on that question for now
Mm-hmm.
because there we've gotten to a point in the narrative and teaching in this session
Mm-hmm.
where we've blurred, we've diminished the need for categorization and ranking and discernment.
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
So it's like, well, what's the difference between bliss and golden thread? I'm like, why do you want to know?
Mm.
We just said there is no threat.
Mm.
If you mistakenly follow golden thread and not your bliss for 10 years, that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so why is there no threat? Why does everything turn out okay in the end, even though you're in the witch's side an extra 10 years? It's because, as we said earlier, you are the golden thread.
Right.
Everything you do is a part of you and your unique golden thread. There is no threat. You do what you do for no good reason, and it's fine.
Yeah.
When we talk in the even in the summer cohort, even in Athens, one of the exercises we did was to say, and this is much easier said than done, in the absence of threat, how do I decide what to do? In this moment now, what do I feel like doing?
Yeah.
And then, if you have the courage enough, you do it.
Yeah.
And for people to even discern, because like in this moment, the thing you may feel like doing is taking a hot bath. But that'll come up and you'll be like, that doesn't even count. That has nothing to do with my career or saving my relationship or whatever. But in this moment, in your body, that is the thing you want to do. And just getting to the point where you can even hear that and hold space for it as a valid request instead of, hey, oh, whatever. Come on, Artie, tell me, what is the difference between golden thread and bliss? And I'm like, I'm just looking at you going like, you are the golden thread. What do you want to do right now?
Right.
That's
Right.
why we're doing more and more live stuff, because in the programs, it's like we need that active sort of guidance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we don't really have time for that, but let me, I should add this in.
Okay.
So you are the golden thread, right? And this takes us back to the two birds metaphor.
Right.
The metaphor from the Upanishadic tradition, and you can put a link on. And I've been teaching about two birds for over a decade. So sacred and profane is like two birds. So for those of you who are not familiar, two birds is an image from the Upanishadic tradition. It's a motif that appears 5 or 6 times throughout the Upanishads, the Rig Veda, which is at the end of the sacred scripture. And to paraphrase, the image is this. Two birds, fast friends, inseparable, sitting on the self-same tree, the tree of life. The first bird eats of the tree. Here is sweet fruit, there is sour fruit. The second bird, not eating, watches. Okay. So the first bird is the part of you that says, I like this, I don't like that. I want validation, I don't want humiliation. And the second bird watches. They are both equally you. The witch is you. The maiden is you. The first bird is profane. I better get a sweet fruit or else. The second bird is sacred. Watches, holds space, without fear, threat, and control. They are both equally you.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when you meditate, you're sort of shifting back into the second bird. You're just watching. You're detaching from the sort of narrative, even though the narrative is still going. Blah blah blah. So meditation is an act of like flexing muscles to put yourself more in the sacred and less in the profane. Fine. What we've said is in the more, I don't know, advanced, nuanced spiritual teachings that I've given every now and then. And this I kind of get at in the Tao Te Ching talk, which you can link to from Sacred Space.
Yeah.
But the two birds is a metaphor. In reality, there is only one bird, which is the second bird, the watching bird. Right? So in the Tao Te Ching talk, one of the upshots is there is only one thing that actually exists. When you achieve enlightenment or whatever, one of the things you perceive directly, not just understand intellectually, but perceive directly as you move through the world in your body, is that there is only one thing that actually exists. There is no second thing, which is why you can't talk about it, because talking requires two things. But if I say something is a tree, there has to be a second thing, something that is not a tree. Okay. And even saying tree, there's the sound tree and then the actual leafy reality. Okay. So in reality, there is only one bird. The ground of reality is the bird that only watches without judgment, without chopping things into good and bad. And the first bird that judges is a phenomenon of the watching bird. Said another way, there is only the ocean, which is the second bird. The first bird is a ripple on the ocean. You can treat them as separate, right? It's your golden thread. Whatever you do is your golden thread. You are the ocean. Whatever the ocean does, calm, swells, tsunami, it is still the ocean. You can treat them as separate, but the deeper reality, there is only one. And this extends to sacred and profane. There is only actually sacred. There is no actual threat.
Yeah.
There's no threat because in reality, there is only one thing that actually exists. So there can't be any threat because threat requires two people, two things. I have to threaten, subject has to threaten object. There's no subject object because there's only one thing that actually exists. There is no actual threat. And you see this in the story. You can screw up all you want because there is no threat, because you are the golden thread. You can't let go of the thread even if you wanted to. You can just taste it and savor it and enjoy it. Or you can pretend, I've lost the golden thread. Either way, it's the golden thread having fun. So there's only one thing that exists. It never dies. It was never killed. There's no second thing to kill it. There's no threat. So the story extends to like being this microcosm of the ground of reality, the nature of reality. Right? Everything you do is bona fide golden thread. You get sick and die. You get old. You suffer. Tragedies happen, and good things happen. And that's kind of a higher level of where the story goes.
Yeah. Thank you. So, considering all that, like coming back down to the forest and the river and everything that happened in the story, what do we reflect on? What?
Oh, exercise. Okay, let's do the exercise.
Yeah, what's the exercise?
Oh yeah, we have 5 minutes left. Okay.
Yeah.
So the exercise, only if you want, no expectation of participation. And just treat this as a journaling prompt and then just write out whatever you think. Okay. The question I think that is interesting is, for you in your life right now, what is your witch's hut right now?
Yeah.
Where are you staying? Spinning out what you think is the golden thread. Fabulous, fabulous, right? But fearful of stepping outside of a certain boundary. Right? And it may be you're like, well, I don't want to step outside because I'm a physician, but not a certified therapist yet. So, and it's perfectly reasonable. It's a perfectly reasonable boundary. Like, I'm not saying don't do it, right? But if there is a boundary and if there is fear driving your action, that's interesting. That is the boundary of the witch's hut. That's okay. But we just want to define what that is.
Yeah.
What is the thing you think is the golden thread that you are clinging to? Even if you are doing your bliss right now, is there some aspect you're clinging to? Because if you lost this part of it, you would lose all of your bliss. I mean, if I stopped doing nature photography, I've been a forest ranger, I've done all this, I've done tours, I've written books, I've done all this stuff. If I didn't do, I would lose my sense of identity. I wouldn't even know. And the story said, I'm not telling you what you should do. The story implies that even if you lose your bliss as you currently understand it, that's okay. It's okay if I one day become a plumber. Right? It seems horrifying at some level now. It's like I would never talk to any of you again. I'll just go off and be a plumber, right? But even if that happened, that would be somehow okay. I don't know how it would be okay right now. But the story gives me reassurance that yes, in the end, it will be okay.
Yeah.
So that's the exercise. What is your witch's hut right now? And just hold space for that. It's not, oh, I need to leave it. Oh, I need to stay longer. It's just like awareness of what your witch's hut right now. Whatever your witch's hut is right now, that is also a stand-in for the current archetype you are in. So for those of you who are in the Creating the Life of Your Dreams cohort that are watching this, actually in this week's responses, I will refer back to today's session of LSS. And we'll go even deeper with that. Okay.
Thank you.
I think that's it.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and close the session. So our next session is next month in the new year. I will put the link up in Facebook and Crowdcast. Please feel free to join, share with your friends, but no pressure either way. And I will go ahead and close the session now. So I hereby close this session of our shared sacred space. Thank you for holding this space with me and with us, and thank you for sharing the nourishment, the emotional nourishment and the spiritual nourishment of the shared sacred space with us. I give you my blessing. Go in peace, bestowed with blessing, free of fear, free of threat, and free of the undue control of others. Have a great day, have a great Sunday, have a great month, and I will see you all in the next session. Thank you. Thank you.